What happens when you test your boyfriend's love at a reunion by kissing your high school ex just to prove you still have power, only to watch him walk away forever? Can a dare meant to show dominance backfire when he gathers evidence, builds a legal case, and serves you with papers that prove he was always 10 steps ahead? I'm Persephone Ashford, but everyone calls me Percy, and I never thought one kiss could destroy everything. I sat in the hospital parking lot that rainy evening, finishing a phone call that made me feel alive again. Cody Brennan was on the other end, laughing at a joke only we understood from high school. His voice brought back memories of football games, late-night drives, and a time when I felt special. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror and smiled at my reflection, feeling younger than I had in years. Daniel was inside getting his wrist checked after some minor work injury, and I had 40 minutes alone. 40 minutes to remember what it felt like to be wanted, not just needed by a husband and child. The rain tapped softly on the windshield as Cody said he couldn't wait to see me at the reunion. I told him I felt the same way, my heart beating faster than it should have. When I saw Daniel walking out of the hospital entrance, I ended the call quickly and hid my phone. He climbed into the passenger seat with his wrist wrapped in a bandage, looking tired and a little pale. I asked him if he was okay, putting on my concerned wife voice, the one I used when I needed to. He said it was just a sprain and that he would be fine in a few days. I noticed he was watching me closely, his eyes lingering on my flushed cheeks and new perfume. I started the car and drove home, chattering about the reunion and how exciting it would be. I told him everyone from our class would be there, including people we hadn't seen in over a decade. Daniel stayed quiet, which annoyed me because I wanted him to share my excitement, or at least pretend. His silence felt like judgment, like he was already suspicious, and that made me feel justified somehow. If he paid more attention to me, I wouldn't need to talk to Cody, I told myself. We got home and I went straight to the bathroom, leaving my phone on the living room couch. I didn't think about it until I came back and saw Daniel holding it in his hand. My stomach dropped as I realized I had left it unlocked, and a notification was glowing on the screen. I snatched the phone from him and demanded to know why he was snooping through my things. He asked me calmly who CB was and why they were sending me heart emojis late at night. I felt my face heat up, but I forced myself to laugh and roll my eyes dramatically. I told him CB was Cody Brennan, an old friend from high school, and that we were just catching up. I said he was being paranoid and controlling, and that I couldn't believe he didn't trust me. Daniel didn't raise his voice, which somehow made it worse, and he just stared at me quietly. I stormed upstairs, clutching my phone, my heart pounding with anger and a little bit of fear. I locked myself in the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my messages. Cody had sent another text asking if I was okay, and I replied that everything was fine. Downstairs, I could hear Daniel moving around in the living room, and the house felt heavy with silence. I convinced myself that he was overreacting, that I hadn't done anything wrong, just talking to an old friend. But a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that I was lying to myself. I ignored it and opened my photo gallery, looking at pictures from the last reunion planning meeting. Cody looked good in every shot, and I felt that familiar thrill of being noticed by someone new. I fell asleep with my phone under my pillow, dreaming of a life where I was excited again. The next morning, Daniel was already awake when I came downstairs, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop. I tried to act normal, pouring coffee and asking about his wrist, but he barely looked at me. I noticed a browser tab open on his screen before he quickly closed it, something about hotel bookings. My chest tightened because I had searched for hotels near the reunion venue just a few days ago. I wondered if he had seen my search history, but I didn't ask because I didn't want to start another fight. Daniel finished his coffee, grabbed his keys and said he had to run some errands before work. I watched him leave, feeling a strange mix of relief and unease, like something had shifted between us overnight. I checked my phone and saw a calendar reminder I didn't recognize on his shared calendar. It was marked private, with no details, just a time and a place I didn't know. I told myself it was nothing, probably just a work meeting he forgot to label properly. But deep down, I felt the first crack in the foundation I had built around my secret. I pushed the feeling away and texted Cody that I couldn't wait to see him at the reunion. He replied with a fire emoji and a winking face, and I smiled, ignoring the guilt creeping up my spine. The week after the hospital parking lot conversation, I started getting sloppy with my lies. At work, I took longer lunch breaks and spent them on video calls with Cody in my car. My co-worker Jenna walked past my desk one afternoon and heard me giggling into my phone screen. She glanced over with a curious smile and asked if everything was okay at home lately. I brushed her off and said I was just excited about the reunion coming up soon. Jenna nodded, but her eyes stayed on me a little too long, and I felt exposed. I minimized the chat window on my computer, but not before she saw dozens of unread messages. Later that day, my manager asked to see me in her office for a quick word. She said a few people had noticed I seemed distracted and that my last campaign report was late. I apologized and promised to get back on track, but inside I felt annoyed and defensive. I told myself they were all jealous because I still had my looks and my excitement. When I got home that evening, Daniel was already there, sitting on the couch with Mira on his lap. He looked up at me with that same unreadable expression he had been wearing for days. I kissed Mira on the head and asked how her day was, trying to sound normal. Daniel said he picked her up early because I forgot to update the shared calendar again. I felt a flash of irritation because he was right, and I hated being caught in small mistakes. I made an excuse about being busy at work and went upstairs to change my clothes. When I came back down, Daniel was making dinner in the kitchen, moving quietly and efficiently around the space. I tried to start a conversation about weekend plans, but he only gave me short, polite answers. Mira chatted about her day at school, and I realized I had barely been listening to her. I forced myself to focus on her story about a classmate's birthday party, but my mind drifted back to Cody. That Saturday afternoon, I ran into Cody at the supermarket, though I had texted him earlier to ask where he was shopping. We met in the wine aisle and stood there laughing and talking for almost 20 minutes. He helped me pick out a bottle of red, and we joked about sneaking away from the reunion. I didn't notice Mrs. Alvarez, a neighbor from 2 streets over, watching us from the cereal aisle. She recognized me from school pickup and from church events where she sometimes saw Daniel's mother Elaine. I found out later that she mentioned it to Elaine the very next day at Sunday service, but in that moment I felt powerful and desired, and I didn't care who saw me. Cody walked me to the checkout line and we stood close together while I paid for my groceries. The cashier glanced between us with a knowing look, and I felt a thrill run through me. When I got home, Daniel was in the garage organizing tools and I hid the wine in the back. That night, I went upstairs early and took a long phone call with Cody from the bedroom. I thought Daniel was watching television downstairs, but he was actually standing on the stairwell landing listening. He heard me laugh and say that he never noticed anything, that I could do whatever I wanted. His hands gripped the banister so tightly his knuckles turned white, but he didn't come upstairs. Instead, he went back down to the living room and opened his laptop in silence. The next morning, Elaine called Daniel while I was still in bed, and I overheard his side of the conversation. She asked if everything was all right, and he said he was looking into some things. She offered to watch Mira anytime he needed, and he thanked her in a voice I didn't recognize. When he hung up, I came downstairs and asked who called, pretending I didn't already know. He said it was his mother and that she was just checking in on us. I felt a wave of paranoia because Elaine had always liked me, but her tone had been cold lately. I asked Daniel if he had said something to her about us, and he shook his head. He said people talk and that I should be more careful about how things look to others. I accused him of caring too much about what other people think, and he didn't argue back. He just looked at me with tired eyes and said he had errands to run that afternoon. After he left, I checked my phone and saw that Cody had tagged me in a comment on an old photo. It was a throwback picture from high school with a flirty caption about the good old days. I liked the comment and added a heart emoji, not thinking about who else might see it. Daniel's brother Jordan saw it later that day and took a screenshot, which he sent to Daniel with one word. I didn't know about that message until much later, but I felt the shift in the air. That evening, Daniel came home with a folder in his hand and his phone in his pocket. He went straight to the guest room and closed the door without saying goodnight to me. I stood in the hallway, confused and a little bit scared, wondering what he was planning. I tried the door handle, but it was locked, and I heard him typing on his laptop inside. I knocked and asked if he wanted to talk, but he said he was busy with work. I went back to our bedroom alone and scrolled through social media, seeing more reunion posts every day. Vanessa had created a group chat for everyone attending, and the excitement was building toward the main event. I felt pulled in two directions, thrilled by the attention from Cody but uneasy about Daniel's silence. I told myself that Daniel was just being dramatic and that he would get over it soon. But when I opened our joint bank account the next morning to pay a bill, I saw something strange. Daniel had created a new column labeled Personal Budget Tracking, and he had moved money into it. There was also a charge I didn't recognize for some kind of cloud storage subscription service. I felt a chill run down my spine because Daniel never did things like this without telling me. I tried calling him at work, but he didn't pick up, and I left a voicemail asking what was going on. He texted back hours later saying he was just organizing our finances and being more responsible. I wanted to believe him, but something felt wrong, like he was preparing for something I couldn't see. The reunion planning party at the rooftop bar was supposed to be just a casual get-together. Vanessa had organized it for a Friday night, and I spent hours getting ready that afternoon. I bought a new dress, did my makeup carefully, and sprayed on expensive perfume Daniel had given me. When I told him about the party, he asked if Cody would be there, and I lied. I said I didn't know who was coming and that it was just old classmates catching up. Daniel looked at me for a long moment and then said he hoped I had fun. His tone was flat, and I felt annoyed that he wasn't even going to fight for me. I told myself that if he really cared, he would have demanded to come along or at least acted jealous. Instead, he just kissed Mira goodnight and went to his laptop in the guest room again. I arrived at the rooftop bar just after sunset, and the city lights were starting to glow below. Cody was already there, standing near the railing with a drink in his hand and a smile. He waved me over and handed me a glass of wine before I even reached the bar. We hugged, and I felt his hand linger on my lower back a little too long. Vanessa was filming everything on her phone for the reunion promo reel she was making, and I loved it. I loved being seen, being noticed, being the center of attention again after years of feeling invisible. More classmates arrived, and the energy in the group grew louder and more relaxed with every round. Cody and I stood close together, laughing at inside jokes no one else understood from high school. Someone suggested we take a group photo, and Cody pulled me in front of him with both arms. I leaned back into him, feeling bold and reckless, and Vanessa snapped the picture with a grin. She posted it instantly to the reunion group chat with a caption about the good times coming back. I checked my phone and saw Daniel had texted asking when I would be home tonight. I rolled my eyes and put the phone face down on the bar without answering him. Cody asked if everything was okay, and I said my husband was just being boring as usual. He laughed and said I deserved someone who appreciated my energy and spontaneity, and I felt validated. A slow song came on, and Cody asked me to dance even though there wasn't a real dance floor. We swayed together near the railing, and his hand was low on my back, dangerously low. I knew people were watching, and I knew Vanessa was filming again, but I didn't care. In that moment, I felt like the version of myself I missed, the one who took risks. When the song ended, Cody leaned close to my ear and whispered that he wished we hadn't broken up. I laughed it off, but my heart was racing, and I didn't pull away from him. Vanessa posted clips from the night to her Instagram story and tagged several of us, including me. I saw the notifications lighting up my phone, but I ignored them and kept drinking and laughing. By the time I got home, it was past midnight, and Daniel was still awake in the guest room. I stumbled upstairs and tried to open the door, but it was locked from the inside. I knocked and asked why he was locking me out of rooms in my own house. He didn't answer, and I heard him typing on his laptop again, calm and unbothered. I went to our bedroom alone, feeling angry and rejected, and fell asleep with my makeup still on. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages from people. My head was pounding from the wine, and I scrolled through the notifications with growing dread. The video from the rooftop bar had spread beyond Vanessa's private story and into the reunion group chat. Someone had shared it in a larger community group that included parents from Mira's school and neighbours. I watched the clip with my stomach sinking, seeing myself pressed against Cody, laughing and ignoring my phone. The comments ranged from supportive emojis to pointed questions about where my husband was that night. I tried to delete the tags, but the video had already been downloaded and reshared too many times. I got a text from Vanessa saying people were asking if Cody and I were back together. I didn't know how to respond, so I left her on read and got out of bed. Daniel was already gone, and I found a note on the kitchen counter saying he took Mira to breakfast. I felt relieved and guilty at the same time because I knew he had seen the video. That afternoon, I went to pick Mira up from a playdate at a friend's house near the school. I ran into Laura, another mum from the pickup line, and she stopped me outside the building. She asked if I had a minute and then showed me the video on her phone nervously. She said people were talking and that she thought I should know what was circulating around town. I forced a smile and told her it was just harmless fun and that people were overreacting. Laura nodded slowly, but her expression said she didn't believe me, and she walked away without saying goodbye. When I got home, Daniel was there, packing more of his things into boxes in the garage. I asked him what he was doing, and he said he was organising and making space. I asked if he was moving out, and he said he was taking some time to think. I accused him of being dramatic and punishing me for one fun night with old friends. He stopped packing and looked at me with a calmness that scared me more than anger would have. He said he wasn't punishing me, just protecting himself and Mira from unnecessary chaos and pain. I asked what that meant, and he said I would understand soon enough. Then he finished loading boxes. That night, he slept in the guest room again, and I heard him on the phone speaking quietly. I pressed my ear to the door and heard words like timeline and documentation and custody notes. My blood ran cold, and I realized he wasn't just upset, he was preparing for something bigger. I tried the door handle again, but it was locked, and he didn't respond when I knocked. I went back to bed feeling more alone than I had in years, surrounded by silence. The high school reunion was on a Saturday night, and I woke up that morning feeling electric. I had been waiting for this night for months, and nothing was going to ruin it. Daniel was distant all morning, moving through the house like a ghost, barely speaking to me. I asked if he was still planning to come with me tonight, and he said yes, flatly. Mira was going to stay with Elaine for the evening, and I felt relieved about that. I didn't want her there to see me having fun and feeling young again. Free. I spent hours getting ready, trying on 3 different dresses before choosing the black one that fit perfectly. Daniel got dressed in silence, wearing a button-down shirt and dark pants, looking handsome but empty. We drove to the community centre separately because I told him I needed to arrive early. The truth was, I wanted to make an entrance without him weighing me down beside me. The community centre hall was decorated beautifully with banners, string lights, and photo collages from our senior year. Music played from speakers in the corners, and a cash bar was set up near the entrance. I saw Cody immediately standing near the bar with a group of guys from the football team. He smiled when he saw me, and I felt my whole body respond to that attention. Daniel arrived a few minutes later with Mira, who was supposed to stay for the family hour. Elaine came to pick her up, and I barely said goodbye because I was already at the bar. Elaine looked at me with disappointment in her eyes, and I ignored it because I was tired of judgment. Mira hugged her father tightly and asked why Mommy wasn't coming to say goodnight to her. Daniel walked her over to me, and I kissed her head quickly, distracted by Cody's laughter behind me. Elaine took Mira's hand and whispered something to Daniel that I couldn't hear, and then they left. I went back to Cody feeling lighter without my family around to watch and judge my choices. The night grew louder as more people arrived and drinks flowed freely from the bar and tables. Vanessa was filming everything again, capturing moments for her reunion highlight reel she planned to post online. Cody and I stood together near the photo wall, laughing at old pictures of us together. Someone made a joke about high school sweethearts, and I played along, leaning into Cody's side naturally. Daniel stood alone near the back of the room, watching everything with his arms crossed. I saw him looking at me, and instead of feeling guilty, I felt defiant and angry. If he couldn't give me excitement and passion, then why should I feel bad for finding it? A slow song came on, and Cody asked me to dance in the middle of the floor. I said yes without thinking, and we moved together while people watched and whispered around us. His hands were on my waist, my arms around his neck, and I closed my eyes. I felt like I was 18 again, like I hadn't made any of the wrong choices yet. Vanessa was filming us, and I saw the red recording light on her phone, but I didn't care. I wanted everyone to see that I was still desirable, still alive, still worth wanting and choosing. The song ended, and Cody didn't let go right away, and then he kissed me, slowly and deliberately. I kissed him back for 3 long seconds before I pulled away, laughing nervously and breathlessly. The room erupted in shocked whispers and a few awkward cheers from people who were too drunk. I turned and looked directly at Daniel, who was standing frozen near the exit door now. His face was pale, his jaw tight, and his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. I felt a rush of power and recklessness, and I walked over to him with Cody behind me. I said loudly enough for people nearby to hear that if he was so upset, he should leave. I told him I was tired of his boring, controlling, jealous attitude ruining everything for me constantly. The room went completely silent, and everyone stared at us, phones out, cameras recording the confrontation. Daniel looked at me for a long, painful moment, and then he turned and walked out. He didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't make a scene. He just left without saying a word. I stood there feeling confused and victorious at the same time, unsure if I had won something. Cody touched my arm and said I did the right thing, and I nodded, trying to believe him. The party continued, but the energy had shifted, and people were whispering about what just happened minutes before. I drank more wine and danced with Cody again, trying to ignore the cold feeling in my chest. Vanessa posted clips from the kiss and the confrontation to the reunion group chat immediately after. By the time I checked my phone an hour later, the video had been shared everywhere. I tried calling Daniel, but his phone went straight to voicemail, and I felt the first stab of fear. I told myself he would cool down and come back like he always did eventually. But deep down, I knew something had broken tonight that couldn't be fixed with apologies or excuses. I stayed at the reunion until it ended, laughing too loud and pretending everything was fine. When I got home after midnight, the house was dark and empty, colder than usual somehow. Daniel's car wasn't in the driveway, and half of his clothes were gone from the closet. I sat on the bed and stared at my phone, watching the reunion video play over and over. I looked happy in the video, glowing and confident, but I felt hollow and scared now. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Elaine saying there was a family lunch. I assumed it was a chance to explain myself and smooth things over with everyone. I drove to Daniel's parents' house and walked in expecting support or at least a conversation. Instead, I found Daniel's whole family sitting around the dining table, silent and stone-faced, waiting. Jordan, Daniel's younger brother, stood up immediately and asked what the hell I was thinking yesterday. I tried to laugh it off and explain that it was just a harmless joke. Elaine cut me off and said she watched the video, and so did everyone else here. She said I humiliated her son in front of the entire town, and she couldn't defend that. I looked at Tom, Daniel's father, hoping for some support, but he pushed his plate away. He said quietly that I should leave, and that I wasn't welcome here until I fixed this. My own mother, Rachel, was sitting at the end of the table, looking torn and uncomfortable. I asked her to say something to defend me, but she just shook her head sadly. Jordan said they all saw the video and that there was no way to spin it. I felt tears of anger and shame burn my eyes, and I left without saying goodbye. Rachel called me later that evening and said she loved me but couldn't defend my actions anymore. I hung up on her and threw my phone across the room, feeling completely alone now. The days after the reunion blurred together in a fog of silence and dread. Daniel stopped responding to my calls and texts except for short, polite messages about Mira's schedule. He stayed at his parents' house, and I was left alone in our home every night. I tried to go back to work on Monday, but my boss Diane called me into her office. She said a client had seen the reunion video and asked uncomfortable questions about my judgment. Diane suggested I take a few days off to let the situation cool down publicly. I felt humiliated and angry, but I agreed because I had no other choice at all. I spent Tuesday morning cleaning the house obsessively, trying to distract myself from the growing panic. I noticed more of Daniel's things were missing from the closets and drawers and shelves. His favorite coffee mug was gone, his laptop charger, his running shoes, all of it disappearing. I went out to the garage early Thursday morning and saw his car parked in the driveway. My heart leaped because I thought he was home, but the house was still empty inside. I walked outside and looked through the car windows, seeing boxes stacked neatly in the back. They were labeled with black marker in Daniel's careful handwriting, words like documents and Mira school records. A folder on the passenger seat was labeled household, thick with papers I couldn't see clearly. The air in the garage smelled faintly of printer toner, and I felt a chill creep up. Daniel arrived a few minutes later to pick up more clothes from the bedroom upstairs. I confronted him in the hallway and demanded to know what he was doing with everything. He said calmly that he was organizing things and protecting what mattered to him most now. I accused him of overreacting and punishing me for one mistake, one moment of bad judgment. He didn't argue or defend himself, just continued folding shirts and packing them into a duffel bag. His phone buzzed on the dresser with a calendar reminder that said, "Meeting personal 10:30. He dismissed it quickly without letting me see more, and I felt my stomach twist with fear. After he left with another load of boxes, I noticed something different about him that afternoon. He was calmer than before, almost distant, like he had made a decision and found peace. When he came back that evening to pick Mira up for dinner, he barely looked at me. I tried to start an argument, to provoke some kind of emotion from him, but he listened quietly. He nodded at everything I said, and then simply walked away with our daughter holding his hand. A week later, Daniel informed me by text that he had opened a separate bank account. He said he would no longer contribute to the joint credit cards we had always shared. He sent me a detailed spreadsheet showing exactly what he would pay for going forward now. It listed Mira's expenses, half the mortgage, utilities, and nothing else beyond that at all. I called him furious and accused him of being controlling and financially manipulative toward me unfairly. He didn't raise his voice or argue back, just said he was being responsible and clear. I hung up and checked our joint account, seeing the money he had moved into columns. There were charges I didn't recognize for cloud storage and some kind of legal software subscription. I tried to access his email to see what he was planning, but he had changed passwords. One afternoon, I learned that Mira had a routine pediatric checkup at the hospital downtown today. I hadn't been told about it, and I felt excluded and angry about being left out. I drove to the hospital and found the cafeteria, hoping to run into Daniel by accident. I saw him sitting alone at a corner table with a folder open in front of him. He was making notes with a pen, his face focused and serious, completely absorbed in something. I walked over and sat down without being invited, and he looked up with no surprise. I tried to apologize, then shifted to blaming him for shutting me out of everything. I cried and said I missed him, and wanted to fix things between us desperately. Daniel listened to everything without changing his expression, his eyes cold and unreadable throughout my speech. When I finally stopped talking, he closed the folder and stood up slowly and deliberately. He said quietly that he was handling this properly and that I would hear from him soon. I asked what that meant, begging for some clarity, but he picked up the folder silently. He walked away without looking back, leaving me sitting alone at the table feeling terrified. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel set firmer boundaries that I couldn't ignore or cross anymore. He declined to attend a family barbecue my mother was hosting for Mira's sake this weekend. He stopped answering my calls after 8 at night, no matter how many times I tried. His phone was always face down on tables, always locked, always near him at all times. I noticed he had changed all his passwords on our shared streaming accounts and banking apps. One Sunday afternoon, I went to Vanessa's house to vent and seek some sympathy finally. I told her everything, expecting her to take my side and validate my feelings completely. Instead, Vanessa admitted nervously that she had shared the reunion video to multiple group chats. She said people kept asking for it and she didn't think it was that serious. I received divorce papers at the courthouse Monday morning in front of everyone watching. Daniel's attorney served me with custody motions, frozen accounts, and documented evidence of everything. My mother stood nearby and said I had done this to myself completely. Daniel watched from the entrance in a suit, calm and prepared, then left. I sat in my car realizing I dared him to leave for real. He left the legal way and I lost everything I once had.